This week on Arts InSight, designs for the park of the future.
To have the dome unenclosed and to have this infrastructure in it, it would be like the Eiffel Tower of Houston.
A painter reimagines architecture.
I go through hundreds of photos and I pick like a couple of them.
Transforming eerie landscapes.
I'm really drawn to kind of mysterious, haunting imagery.
Art can be anything, even dried fruit.
Every culture who knows this story is going to put it in context for them that's meaningful for them.
And the sights and sounds of a one-of-a-kind home for music.
I think what we know about music is that it inspires all of us, and there's something here for everyone.
I'm Ernie Manous, and it's time to get Arts InSight. Welcome to Arts InSight. This is a place of work. No, it's true. Some companies have been trending toward unique, whimsical office designs like this one. It's bright, it's bold, but does it spark creativity? We'll find out soon. But first, a new design for one of Houston's most iconic structures. One architect's idea would transform the historic Astrodome into a dome-shaped, open-air park.
The spanking new Astrodome is the new $31 million home of the Houston Astros.
It's been around since 1965.
A dome stadium that holds nearly 50,000 for a baseball game.
People grew up going to ball games there. All kinds of events happen there.
Plastic ceiling makes it an all-weather stadium.
When it was built, there was nothing like it. There was nothing even close to the 643-foot span. It was never done before.
The winner by a technical knockout and still heavyweight champion of the world, Cassius Clay.
What I think is really important about the dome is that it has these kind of individual meanings for different people. It has to do with what went on inside, what event you saw, who you were with.
As the Astrodome gets ready to shut its doors after 35 years of hosting Major League Baseball.
I realized this building is very important to Houston, and I started thinking about it as an architect. And the more I looked at it, the biggest innovation in the dome is in the engineering. So I thought, well, let's remove the exterior envelope and celebrate the structure. But then you have this kind of problem where, what do you do with that? I've worked for a lot of architects all over the world, and the ones that I really enjoyed working for are ones who kind of look at every problem differently and come up with different solutions. North and South Boulevards are very famous for the live oak trees. It's kind of like an unexposed structure, and then on top of that, it has a kind of infrastructure that lives on it, which is incredible. It has ferns and birds and squirrels' nests, and it's just a really amazing experience just to walk under those trees and experience the shade also that you get from it. It's not quite an enclosed space, and it's not quite unenclosed. That's what the dome will become, just on an enormous scale. So that became the Astrodome Park. I have a partner in this, Ben Ulshner. Architects want to make the world sort of a better place. This is a concept. I'm not saying this is what's moving forward. The dome is currently surrounded by parking. There's 26,000 parking spaces. And what happens is the sun shines down on that black asphalt, and the heat actually radiates off the asphalt. Actually, the temperature rises. There's a term for it called a heat island. So we surround the dome with a park, almost 40 acres. So that park space would be shaded, cooled space with water-absorbing grass surface around it. One of the highlight features of it would be a ramp that goes all the way to the top of the dome. So you could imagine running up there in the morning. It would be almost a 2-mile run to the top of the dome. You can imagine walking or running up there in the morning and seeing the sunrise over the Gulf. And then the center of the dome, we call this other piece of infrastructure the Great Floor. And the Great Floor would be a place where any kind of event can happen. A rock concert, the rodeo, anything you could imagine. To have the dome unenclosed and to have this infrastructure in it would be really an incredibly unique feature for the city. It would be like the Eiffel Tower of Houston. We've had tremendous response to our project. People feel like that would be a very attractive thing to do with the Astrodome. You know, it's not a baseball stadium anymore. They play downtown. It's not a football stadium. There's a football stadium right next to it. So what is it? That's the question, right?
See an in-depth view of the concept at adomepark.org. We're back at the offices of HCSS, where a less traditional office environment aims to increase employee happiness. It's proven that happy employees are more creative. Joining us now is CEO of HCSS, Mike Ryden. So for 30 years, you've been running this company. It's always been kind of at the forefront of this kind of understanding of how people work best. What have you found productivity-wise when you give employees this kind of environment?
Well, one of the things we particularly like to do is treat them as professionals. So we have game room, exercise facilities, weight room and all that. We don't monitor their use of any of that. Some of them come in, work late at night and on weekends. They also play basketball late at night and on weekends. And we're not watching what they do. We try to treat them like adults. We do treat them like adults. And you might think we have the game room that's not, it's not monitored, you can do it anytime. You might think they would abuse that, but they don't. They're working all the time and they play whenever they want to.
Do a lot of people use the slide to leave work?
I understand a lot of people from the second floor leave work down the slide, yes.
And to get up the slide, they have to go up the rope ladder.
Correct.
And then you've also got dog kennels, you've got movie rooms, you've got, as you mentioned, the game rooms, a full gym, weight room, basketball court, not your traditional work environment.
No, we actually, it was interesting how this came about. My dad was a factory worker, and when I was a teenager, I told him I wanted to enjoy working for a living, and he told me that's not the way it works. You put in your 40 hours in the factory, and then you go home and enjoy yourself afterwards. Being a teenager, I rebelled against that at the time, and I'm still rebelling against that to this day. To me, you should go to work and enjoy it. You're going to spend a lot of time there with people that are hopefully your friends, not people you dread. And we want everybody to get up in the morning, come to work, enjoy the people they work with, enjoying the environment, and enjoy the challenging work that they have.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and enjoy a lot more that you have here and show it to our audience. Thank you so much for showing us around.
Okay, thanks, Ernie.
For more creative office designs, browse around Pinterest. There's a catalog of ideas out there. Now, a Minnesota artist uses his oil paintings as a sort of architectural preservation. Each one captures a slice of urban areas throughout the Midwest.
A lot of my painting is, I feel like it's a sense of preservation, historical preservation. There are pictures that I've painted where the buildings and signs are no longer there. There's other sites I want to get, like the Cottage Grove Drive-In before that comes down, the Viking Bar before that comes down. There's a lot of places that I want to photograph before they take it away. I've been oil painting all my life. I have a BA in design, so we were trained to look at our environments and the page as blocks of shape and color and design and stuff. And so every time I, look at my surroundings, I see like compositions. Before I started painting every day, I took photographs of the cities I would visit. I would just take all sorts of pictures of the buildings and stuff. So it was a natural subject to start painting. I go through hundreds of photos and I pick like a couple of them, and then I blow them up to see how they look. And then I go to a copy store and I have them enlarge them. It comes in two pieces because this one's so big. And then I tape them together. And it's like a puzzle. I try to, match the exact lines. And then I take a graphite stick, and it is low tech, but I do graphite on the back as thick as I can. And that way it allows me to then go in with a pen and trace the detail. When I lift it up, the line will have transferred onto the canvas. I like doing this way as opposed to an artograph or something because it allows me to trace more detail. Mixing the colors is half the process for me. I like the gooiness and the texture of oils. There's just an opportunity to make a lot more different colors, I think, from oil than there is from acrylic or water. I study a photograph and I study the actual color and then I try to duplicate it. By doing that, I usually end up with my own color, but something close to what I'm, looking at. With shadows, I can be more playful. I can put, blues or violets and stuff where a photograph might just show a gray. I'm attracted to letters and words and stuff, so I usually try to capture some kind of word or lettering along with the architecture. I see my paintings as designs more than anything else. You can't really take any one thing out of them and have it work. It's, everything has got its place. It should evoke a sense of, that's a building, but it's a piece of art too. So I think if it makes people question the ambience of their surrounding and better awareness of light and architecture, then, that's a good thing.
You can find out more by visiting MikeWeltonArt.com. Up next, a glimpse at the work of another Minnesota artist, this one inspired by landscapes that are both mysterious and haunting.
People have been making art for tens of thousands of years. I mean, we have these cave paintings in the south of France, but clearly they were just drawing the world around them and capturing the mystery of it. So I feel like with my art, I'm kind of working in a tradition that goes back 40,000 years. So it is timeless. I'm a visual artist, and the work that I do mostly is lithographs, which is a type of printmaking, and I also make pen and ink drawings. What I really like about lithography, I love the moodiness that you can capture. There's something about the texture of the stone which gives it this really kind of misty, foggy look. Because I do a lot of landscapes, mostly from this area in Minnesota. I'm really drawn to kind of mysterious, haunting imagery. I've always been a visual person, so wherever I go, I'm always kind of soaking things up, which might gel for a while and appear later as artwork. A lot of how I work is from memory or from dreams, because I'm always being bombarded with images all the time. Well, this surprises a lot of people, but a lot of my landscapes are just made up. I'm not like a plein air artist sitting outside drawing a scene, just exactly the way I see it. When I'm working on the stone, I feel like I'm working with nature instead of against it. Of course I draw nature a lot because it's what I like, it's what I'm drawn to. It's where I find beauty, it's where I find spiritual sustenance.
See more by visiting kurtseberg.com. Now, what's normally just a large fruit has become the main subject of an Ohio native's art collection. From nativity scenes to domestic animals, she's transformed dried gourds into modern art.
We're at St. Francis of Assisi in Victorian Village. This is the church hall, which is underneath the main church. Well, I've always liked gourds, and some years ago I saw a nativity in a fair trade store here in Columbus, and it was a two-piece nativity made out of gourds, wood burn, from Peru. And I thought, I like gourds, I can do that. So I started on just the mama and papa, and then I found a gourd that looked like a giraffe to me. And I figured, okay, if there's going to be a giraffe, there has to be other African animals. So it just grew out of that. I've got about 65 animals. I have a couple of favorite pieces. I like the bat, I like the porcupine, I like the cheetah, I like the rats. They were the second two that I made after the giraffe, the rats. They're all dried gourds, so they're not going to rot, they're not going to mold or anything else. They're all wood burned. The Indian King's camel took me a week to do, just the week, because he was a two-humper and he has lots of hair growing out of him, and then, you know, of course, he's got to have saddle and all that kind of stuff. And I look for specific shapes sometimes. Sometimes I go and something calls to me and says, I know that's a sheep, or I know that's an alligator, or whatever. And sometimes I just go looking for parts, like gourd stems or long neck gourds that I can use the long neck as legs on something. The loofahs make great sheep. Gourd seeds make ears and tongues sometimes. Gourd stems are legs and tails. A lot of the things that the kings bring are natural things I've found outside, or I've found some strange pod from East Africa at the gourd show. It's interesting that when you open up a gourd, you never know what you're going to find inside. Sometimes the inside is a luminous color that looks almost silvery, and so you can use that. I got an angel that has wings and a halo out of that, and I did nothing to the inside of the gourd. That's the way it came. You never know what you're going to find out, and that's the exciting part, that every time that you open up a gourd, it's a brand new experience. 2 years ago, I added a queen. Instead of the three kings, I added a queen, an Egyptian queen. The angels all play traditional African instruments. The African king has traditional kente cloth for the mat that he puts his things on, and he wears a traditional kente cloth fabric. The same with the Asian king and the Indian king. The fabrics that they wear and the mats that they have their gifts on are traditional to that era or that culture. Every culture who knows this story is going to put it in context for them, that's meaningful for them, whether it's an Alaskan nativity or whether it's a Chinese nativity, they're all going to be in. So this is an African nativity to me.
Find a list of upcoming gourd-related art events across the country at AmericanGourdsSociety.org. And finally tonight, there's a museum in Phoenix devoted to musical instruments from around the world. It includes exhibits from nearly every country, with an insider's view of how each instrument was made and played.
It's one thing to see an instrument or an object on display. It's another thing to see it played in its cultural context and hear what that music sounds like. The Musical Instrument Museum is located in North Phoenix, Arizona, and the building itself is 200,000 square feet, and 80,000 square feet of that building is dedicated to exhibit space. We have more than 15,000 objects in our collection. That includes musical instruments as well as other artifacts from every country in the world. There are opportunities in the museum, particularly in the experience gallery, for them to have a hands-on sort of experience with instruments from around the world. The music theater has been touted as the crown jewel of MIM, in the sense that it is a 300-seat theater that is acoustically superb in nature. We've had basically every style and genre of music imaginable. With over 15,000 instruments in our collection and 6,000 of those on display, we have a visible conservation lab where much of the work, whether it's repair, restoration, or stabilization of instruments is done, is in that space. The work that's done there that's visible to the guests, which is also a really interesting experience. They're getting a first look or a really intimate look at what it takes to preserve those instruments. And so the conservation lab is really state of the art. Once a guest makes their way upstairs, we have spaces that are dedicated to different continents around the world, and they're broken up into 5 geographical galleries. So the first gallery that most guests will make their way to is Africa and the Middle East. They will then move on to Asia and Oceania, Latin America and the Caribbean, and then the United States and Canada, as well as Europe. So within those spaces, and the beauty of those is that they're free-flowing. There's no prescribed journey. It's really a journey around the world through music, and they can sort of self-select where they'd like to go. So many of these instruments come to us from the general public in terms of donations. Another way in which instruments come to us are through loans. And then the last way in which many instruments come to us, and really what makes up the bulk of our collection, is through the acquisition process. So the curators have traveled the world in foreign countries around the world, third world countries, places that are so remote that you sometimes have to travel by horseback to get there. But the curators are dedicated to that process, and it is, I think, they consider their mission to find these treasures and to bring them back to MIM for the public's enjoyment.
My name is Daniel Piper. I'm a curator here at the Musical Instrument Museum. One of 5, I concentrate on the Latin America and Caribbean collection. So one of the things that makes MIM unique is that we were interested in music as part of culture. And so to do that, when we procure instruments, many times we go out to the countries directly. We want to experience, how the musicians play this instrument in a context, whether it's a ritual or whether it's a dance or a family occasion. And we find rare instruments often in rural villages, whether it's in Guatemala or in parts of Mexico. And there we create stories by combining these instruments we've collected in the fields with video and photography and field research about these traditions. And that becomes part of our display here. So it goes beyond a museum of displaying artifacts or sort of art objects of, from music to something that is telling an ethnographic story about music making around the world. So here's an example of the gallery experience at MIM. We have between 5,000 and 6,000 instruments on display at any one time, and they're divided into galleries by continent. So here, as I'm walking into the Latin American gallery, which has itself 38 exhibits, we have some thematic exhibits like the Recycled Orchestra from Paraguay, instruments made from recycled trash for children there. That's a wonderful, incredible story. And then we wander here into a part of the gallery that's deals with the Antillean Islands and the Caribbean. There's a small display here on the Bahamas. Also, as we continue, we cover other countries and genres like the steel pan from Trinidad, and then passing through to Central America. Then you have Guatemala and Belize and Costa Rica. And as you approach an individual exhibit, you're going to see photography, there's going to be video. You put on a set of headphones, you don't have to do anything. Automatically, the sound of the wonderful traditional and popular music of that country comes into your headset. And then you can explore and you learn about instruments and music from traditional festivals and from dances, from popular music, and it's your journey through the world through music.
The mission of the Musical Instrument Museum is really about representing music and music culture and musical instruments from every country in the world. I think what we know about music is that it inspires all of us. And there's something here for everyone, whether you're a music lover, whether you're a musician, young, old. It's really a universal language that we all love and share. We use music in time of celebration. We use music in time of sorrow. We have a need as human beings to create music in some form or fashion. And that happens through these instruments that are crafted in the most simplistic and crude way up to the most refined way. And I think that when guests visit MIM, they're going to see themselves within the language of music, no matter how it's represented here. And I think that's what we have to offer that's different from other institutions.
Visit mim.org for more details. And that does it for this edition of Arts Insight. For all of us here at Houston Public Media, I'm Ernie Manous. Thanks for watching, and have a great week.